Hello, people. Let's get started.
Elliot slumped in his chair, staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen. The deadline for his project loomed like a storm cloud, but instead of working, he found himself watching productivity videos, scrolling through social media, and convincing himself that just 5 more minutes wouldn't hurt. It wasn't that he didn't want to work, he did. Or at least, he wanted the work to be done. But every time he tried to start, an invisible force pulled him away, whispering that he could always do it later. Ugh, Elliot groaned, rubbing his face. How do I stop procrastinating and start working? As if in response, a notification popped up on his screen. Struggling with procrastination? Download the Procrastination Cure app now. Elliot blinked. He didn't remember searching for anything like that. Probably just another ad algorithm reading his thoughts. Still, he clicked the link out of curiosity. A sleek, minimalistic website appeared. The Procrastination Cure, the only tool you'll ever need to stop procrastinating and take control of your life. Try it free. He hesitated. It was probably some scammy self-help nonsense. But what if it actually helped? With a sigh, he clicked download. As soon as the app installed, a notification flashed. Welcome, Elliot. Your personalized productivity journey begins now. A new message appeared. Would you like to begin? Elliot tapped yes. The screen went dark. Then, words in glowing blue font appeared. Initializing. Rewiring neural pathways. Optimizing focus. What the hell? Elliot muttered. Suddenly, his vision blurred. His head spun. The room around him dissolved into darkness. Then, silence. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't in his apartment anymore. He stood in an enormous, futuristic control room. Walls of glowing screens displayed various aspects of his life. Unfinished projects, missed deadlines, time wasted on distractions. A tall figure in a crisp suit appeared beside him. His face was smooth, featureless except for two piercing, glowing blue eyes. Welcome, Elliot, the figure said in a voice that sent chills down his spine. I am Taskmaster. You've been brought here for intervention. Elliot stepped back. Intervention? What is this place? This, Taskmaster gestured to the screens, is your mind. Specifically, the part responsible for productivity. And right now, it's in chaos. Elliot's gaze darted to the screens. One showed him binge-watching videos, another had him scrolling through memes, yet another replayed the countless times he promised himself he'd start tomorrow. This is insane, Elliot whispered. What's insane, Taskmaster said, is that you've wasted 2,167 hours in the last 3 years on procrastination. Elliot swallowed hard. Okay, I get it. But how do I fix this? Taskmaster clasped his hands behind his back. Simple. We're going to train your brain. No more distractions. No more excuses. You will become the most productive version of yourself. Before Elliot could protest, Taskmaster snapped his fingers. Suddenly, Elliot was seated at a desk in a sterile white room. His laptop appeared before him, and a digital timer counted down from 30 minutes. Task, work on your project. No distractions. Elliot reached for his phone out of habit, but it wasn't there. He turned to look around. No windows, no exits. Just him and the work. A voice echoed from the ceiling. The only way out is to complete your task. Elliot exhaled sharply. Fine. He could do this. He cracked his knuckles, placed his hands on the keyboard, and began typing. Elliot forced himself to focus. The sterile room around him offered no distractions. No phone, no social media, no snack breaks. Just him and his work. He typed hesitantly at first, expecting his usual urge to check something meaningless, but nothing happened. No intrusive thoughts. No overwhelming anxiety. He finished his first paragraph. Then another. Before he knew it, the 30-minute timer beeped. Task completed. Well done. Elliot exhaled in surprise. He had actually worked. No distractions, no procrastination. Taskmaster's voice filled the room. Your brain resists effort because it seeks comfort. By limiting distractions, we are rewiring your neural pathways for productivity. The room shifted. Elliot blinked as he suddenly found himself standing in front of a giant maze of doors, each one labeled excuses, distractions, fear of failure, perfectionism, burnout. What is this? Elliot asked. Taskmaster stepped forward. These are the root causes of your procrastination. You must overcome them. One door creaked open. Excuses. A gust of wind pulled Elliot inside before he could resist. He found himself back in his apartment, but something was wrong. It felt like a dream, hazy, yet familiar. He was sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop screen. His past self sighed and muttered, "I'll start in 5 minutes." Elliot recognized this day. It was a deadline night from months ago, one where he had promised himself he'd work after watching just one episode of a show. He never did. As past Elliot reached for the remote, present Elliot stepped forward. "No, stop," he shouted. But his past self couldn't hear him. A whisper filled the air, surrounding him like fog. "You're too tired. You'll do better work later. 5 more minutes won't hurt." Elliot clenched his fists. No, he knew this pattern too well. He watched past Elliot get sucked into the cycle again, losing hours. Taskmaster's voice echoed. "Recognizing excuses is the first step. Now, break the cycle." Elliot lunged forward, knocking the remote out of past Elliot's hand. The scene froze. The fog dissipated. The room dissolved back into the maze. Taskmaster nodded approvingly. "You are learning." Another door creaked open. Fear of failure. This time, Elliot was pulled into a dark auditorium. A spotlight shone on a stage where he stood alone, his laptop in front of him. Rows of faceless figures filled the seats, whispering, "What if your work isn't good enough? People will judge you. Why even try?" Elliot's chest tightened. This was the fear that always lingered, the one that made him hesitate before starting anything important. Taskmaster's voice boomed. "Fear paralyzes action. The only way through is to act despite it." Elliot inhaled sharply. He placed his fingers on the keyboard and started typing. The whispers grew louder, but he kept going. As words filled the screen, the faceless figures faded, one by one, until the auditorium was empty. The maze reappeared. Taskmaster gave a small nod. "You are stronger than your fears." Elliot barely had time to catch his breath before another door flung open. Perfectionism. This time, he was in a pristine office with a massive whiteboard filled with to-do lists, drafts, and crossed-out ideas. A figure sat at the desk, gripping a red pen so tightly their knuckles turned white. Elliot realized with a jolt, it was him. Past Elliot tapped his pen against his desk, frowning at his screen. "Not good enough," he muttered. "Needs to be perfect." He deleted an entire paragraph and rewrote it, then deleted it again. Elliot's stomach twisted. How many times had he done this? Obsessing over every word until he exhausted himself before even finishing? Taskmaster spoke beside him. Perfectionism disguises itself as high standards, but in reality, it is fear in another form. Elliot stepped forward and put a hand on his past self's shoulder. "Just finish it," he whispered. Past Elliot froze. His grip on the red pen loosened. Slowly, he nodded and started typing, without deleting. The office faded, and the maze returned. Elliot exhaled. This was harder than he had expected. The last door opened. Burnout. This time, the room was gray, lifeless. A version of Elliot sat slumped in a chair, eyes hollow, stacks of unfinished work piled around him. The weight of exhaustion pressed against the air itself. Elliot recognized this state, the numbness after pushing too hard. Taskmaster stood beside him. Even discipline must be balanced. Productivity is not endless work, but sustainable effort. Elliot approached his burnt-out self. "You need breaks," he murmured. "Not avoidance. Real breaks." Slowly, his exhausted self blinked and nodded. The gray lifted. The stacks of work lightened. The room dissolved back into the maze. Taskmaster turned to Elliot. "You have faced your greatest obstacles. Now, you must apply what you've learned." Elliot blinked, and suddenly, he was back at his desk in the real world. His laptop was open. The blinking cursor waited. But something was different. The weight in his chest was gone. The excuses, the fear, the need for perfection, none of them had power over him anymore. He cracked his knuckles and started typing. This time, he wouldn't stop. Elliot worked steadily, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The words flowed with an ease he hadn't felt in years. He no longer hesitated, no longer second-guessed every sentence. For the first time, he was just working. Minutes turned into hours. The usual distractions, checking his phone, opening new tabs, rereading the same paragraph over and over, never came. He wasn't trapped by excuses, fear, or perfectionism anymore. By the time he finished his project, he leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. His hands ached from typing, but he felt lighter than he had in years. A notification popped up on his screen. "Congratulations, Elliot. Task completed." Taskmaster's voice echoed in his mind. You have learned to master yourself. The cycle is broken. The notification disappeared, replaced by a simple question. Would you like to uninstall the Procrastination Cure app? Elliot hesitated. The app had changed him. It had dragged him through the depths of his own mind, forcing him to confront his worst habits. It had worked, but did he still need it? His heart pounded as he hovered over yes. Finally, he clicked. The screen flickered. The app vanished. For a long moment, nothing happened. Elliot half expected to be sucked back into the maze, to see Taskmaster looming over him with one last test. But the only thing in front of him was his finished work. He exhaled slowly. He didn't need the app anymore. The lessons it had taught him were still there, inside him. He had the power to focus, to overcome distractions, to work without fear of failure. This was his mind now. The next morning, Elliot woke up and sat at his desk. His laptop glowed in the dim morning light. He had another project to start, another challenge ahead. But this time, there was no dread, no hesitation. He placed his fingers on the keyboard and got to work. And he never looked back.